Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co hosts. I'm Dr. Joe Hamlett. And alongside me, as always, Dr. Dave Peltz. How you doing, Dr. Dave?
Doing good, doing good. Got my second cup of coffee rolling. So you know this is going to be a fun one.
I don't know. We'll see. I hope you don't go off the rails. So we'll see.
Who knows what's going to happen today,
Possibility.
Joe?
Okay.
I'm keeping my mind open.
There you go. That's the way we like to do it. Well, thanks for all of you who are tuning in to this episode. Thanks if you're returning, and for those of you this may be your first time, thanks for joining us. As always, this is the Personal, Professional, Career Development Podcast where we want to assist you on your journey, whatever that looks like for you. As I've always said, me and Dave are on a journey together. We're on our own separate journeys, as well as you may fit into that same category if you're working with someone else. So, and just like always, the way we start this out, so one of us introduces the topic, and of course, I'm still coming. We're both still kind of high on our last episode, which was celebrating our 200th episode. It's still really hard to believe that has happened. That we've been at this for this long, but it again, and a testament to just that commitment, that discipline, that persistence, and just continuing to do this even when we didn't feel like it. So again, just still on that high and want to continue down this path of, what's next for us. So with that, I know I've been a little long-winded this introduction, but again, just still high from that last week's episode. So this week, we're going to kind of finish up or continue along that path that we were on before we kind of jumped into the celebration. And so, kind of based on the celebrating episode 200, now we're talking about, is your next goal in sight? Think
Yeah.
about that. Is your next goal in sight? Again, we've reached 200. What's next for us? So I'll let Dave start off by telling us, is our next goal in sight?
So I think we need to clarify is your next goal insight or is your next goal in sight? So insight as,
Okay.
that forward thinking visionary type thing. And we're focusing in a little bit more on can you see your goal, next goal. So
Yeah.
so is your next goal in view, in sight? And I would say for us, yes, we do have a definite goal, and that's to wrap up this season, 8 more episodes, including this one. So 7 more after this one. That'll be our completion of 4 years of this podcast and
Yeah.
observing its evolution and its growing, its growth. So I would say that goal is in sight. We have other goals that may not be in sight. We're
Right.
still trying to figure them out, and we've discussed some of the our personal goals offline, and career aspirations, and what do we do next, and that sort of thing. And some of those they're a little fuzzy. It's kind of like if I'm driving, I take off my glasses, I can't read the road signs. I need to find my glasses, put them on so I can actually see what's being said up there. And it
Right.
still might be too far away to make out what it is, but there's something up there. There's an off ramp I want to take. And so, yeah, that's where we're kind of going with this is your next goal in view, in sight, in view. And hopefully it is because, as Joe mentioned, there's a lot of things that go along with that. And we're continuing the theme. And we talked a lot during our um, 200th episode about, things that Joe mentioned, like consistency, dedication, diligence. Uh, Joe says them better than I do. That those are the ones that I remember off the top of my head. And so, that's where we're kind of going with this. Is your next goal in sight? Can you see it? Are you working towards it? Are you actively, consciously, deliberately working towards that goal that you see? And if you don't see it, are you still working towards that goal till it comes into view?
Yeah, and that's a good point. A lot of us sometimes can't see it, but I think of it this way, and I'll just share a quick story. For me, like when I finished up my education journey, finished my doctorate degree, no longer have my laptop pulled up in front of me, and my wife looks over and says, well, what are you going to do now? And I did not have a clue. I did not have
Mm,
an answer for her, but she could see that I couldn't sit still. I
mm,
had to be doing something. And that was a reminder for me that, even though you've reached this milestone or this goal, what do you do after that? And that'll be a constant reminder for me. Of course, after I sat there and thought about it for a few minutes, I said, yeah, I do. I think I do have something in mind, something that I might want to try. And that's what it really boiled down to, just an idea. And I ran with that idea, and it was to become an adjunct professor.
mm.
And so I immediately went down that path of trying to secure employment as an adjunct professor. And within a couple of months, I was able to do that. So again, without having an idea or a goal in sight, I was able to quickly think about, okay, here's my next goal, and to actively pursue that. Kind of what you mentioned. Are you actively pursuing it? And for me, it fell into place. Not necessarily just because all the stars aligned, but I started to be intentional about it. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of my favorite words now, being intentional about the things you want to do. And then they do seem like the stars start to align because you have created a focus, something that you're trying to pursue or something that you're trying to attain. And it does become, again, seems like everything starts to line up. Kind of like I think about, and I may be saying the wrong movie, but I think it was Mr. Deeds with Adam Sandler when he's in a, no, so again, I might be wrong, but I'm thinking he was in a Lamborghini or something and all the lights turned green when he was driving the car. That may not be right. It might have been the movie with, I can't think of the other comedian, but it had something to do with all the lights turning green. And it was just that idea that you can keep going. There's no
Yeah.
stopping you. So, but yeah, so that's what I think of. If we don't have a goal in sight, or if we don't have another, milestone in our view, then we may get sidetracked a little. We may lose some of that momentum that we had.
Yeah, and for me, when talking about education journeys and just career journeys, you know, the first time I got out of the military, I had a goal in mind. I could see it, and I wasn't able to obtain that goal, but I was able to
Right.
obtain a similar goal. I was looking for employment. I thought this was going to be my next job. And that wasn't it. So I thought maybe this would be my next job. That wasn't it. So my goal was still to find employment. It just wound up being in a different place.
Right.
And and that's okay. I mean, my education journey, like Joe, it's like every degree that I obtained, I'm like, yes, I'm done. And the professors are like, no, this is only the beginning. Yes, I got my master's. It's done. No, this is only the beginning. Yes, I got my doctorate. I'm done. No, definitely, hell no. This is just the beginning. It's like, and it was. And each time it was a new beginning, and I had to find another goal. And like you sitting on the couch thinking, what am I going to do next after your wife asked you? Sometimes it does take a few moments or a few days or a few
Right.
weeks or a few months to figure out what that next goal is, because you really have to take stock on what's around you. Do
Right.
an inventory of what's around you, what you've done. Are you still aligned with where you want to go, or like we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, do you need to shift gears
Right.
and
Yeah.
refocus or focus more? And that's what Joe and I, what our journeys have been like. Sometimes we had to shift gears to find that next goal or to put that next goal in place or to see it. And sometimes that means talking to a coach or a mentor or peer or colleague or supervisor. That's helped me a lot. Family members. Are you sure this is what you want to be doing? You don't seem happy. And
Right.
in one career, I was like, yeah, this is, I was meant to be, I thought I was going to be here 3 to 6 months, and wound up being 5.5 years. And it was horrible. So I did have to, like, one of the terms that I use is rip off the band-aid and start again. But there
Right.
was some planning that went into the before, making that big, you know, being in fifth gear and then shifting down into first. I mean, that's a big, I mean, that was a hard stop. Still moving forward, but that was a big downshift. But it got me to where I am today. And same with, a lot of things in life. Sometimes they don't go quite as planned, but they're going to maybe put you in a better position than you realize if you just take the right, if you focus in and understand that there's a reason behind things that happen. It may not be what you wanted to happen, but it will guide you in the direction you should be on.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point as far as even if you do have a plan in place or a goal in mind beyond this recent milestone that you've achieved, you may have to reevaluate to see if it's still even, where you want to be or where you want to go. Because again, you may have started this journey 10 years ago. And as reach those milestones, that vision may have started to change. Those things that you were pursuing may not seem as important or may not be in alignment anymore. So
Right.
I think that's, even if you do have a plan in place for your next 10, 15 years, that may be your plan, but so many things could change during that time that it no longer looks like your plan anymore, or it doesn't again align anymore. You may have thought you were going to go down this path, but ended up taking a left or a right. And now it doesn't resemble what your original plan looked like. So I think that's also something that you have to keep in mind, that even if you have this well laid out plan, and that's something we've talked about before, if me and Dave gave you our plans for you to follow, even though they've been cemented, have worked for us, they probably wouldn't work for you just because the circumstances are going to be different. The timing is going to be different. All those things are going to be different. So you have to be open to new interpretation of what that looks like for the future. And again, whether it still aligns with that original plan. And so, but recognizing that is also important. And what you said is important to get some feedback from other people. You may think you're one way or this is how you're being portrayed, but you're not. So it is valuable for you to get that information from, people that are close to you, who know you, who see you in action, to maybe help you identify what that next milestone, what that next goal could be. So I think that's important.
Yeah. And you mentioned the 10 to 15 year plan. And some of us are only working on a week to week or month to month or
Absolutely.
maybe just what's going to happen in the new year plan,
Right. Yep.
what my new resolutions are going to be, and I've got a few of those myself. I'm sure Joe does. And, it's one of the most common things I think they say in the world, that everyone has a New Year's resolution of some sort, or maybe they don't call it a resolution, but they have something in mind that they want to do or do differently. And, that's kind of a cool thing, because it's kind of a shared experience that we all go through. But some of these, goals that we are talking about being in sight might just be something small, that next step, that first step, that continuing step, like I said, if I take my glasses off and I can leave my glasses on, I still can't see what's going on down the road. So it's like, but be open minded to change and adaptation. We've talked about that before, because things do happen. Shit happens sometimes. It's unexpected and unfortunate or fortunate. Someone won
Right.
that $1.8 billion lottery the other day, and it's like, how's it even possible?
Right.
And then I
Yeah.
was told, well, you have to actually play to win.
Buy the
So
ticket. Yeah.
yeah, you buy the ticket and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, that's a something I haven't thought about in a while. So, but what are your goals? What are your small goals, your micro goals, that you have to look forward to?
Yeah, and again, to touch on what our next goal is, and it definitely is insight, and Dave touched on it at the very beginning, is the fact that, like you said, we're going to finish up year four of this podcast, and like I say, celebrating 200, and then now we're going to be celebrating, the end of season four. It's still just unbelievable that we are here. But our next goal is in sight to finish up this year strong. We, like Dave said, we've talked about maybe making some changes, some adjustments, because for us this is still a learning process. We you can if you started from day one, you can see the changes in our backgrounds, the changes in our music, just the way we approach things, that we had more guests. I mean, those types of things, because we're trying to take those cues to help us continue. Like I said at the very beginning, this is still a journey for us as well. We're excited about this whole journey. So at the same time, we're taking cues on what we should be doing differently, how we can do it better. And so we definitely have our next milestone, our next goal in sight. And then so once we achieve that one or reach that goal or milestone, we'll be looking at those next ones. So that's our thought, is that constant, state of seeing what could be. And I think that's why I kind of joked when Dave said keeping an open mind. That's really what this is for us. Just, staying intentional about doing the podcast, but also being open to the potential, where it could go, what could happen from this process. So that's the way we view this. One
Yeah.
milestone is in place, but I'm sure once that when we reach that one, we'll be thinking of other ones ahead of that.
Yeah, and we've alluded over the past 10 weeks to, there's going to be some changes. We've talked about, you've mentioned it several times this podcast. There are going to be some subtle changes, some refinements, some nuances for the podcast, and that's good. That's a learning experience.
Yep.
When Joe and I first started the podcast, I'm pretty sure this is what it sounded like. Hi, my name is Dr. Dave. This is Dr. Joe. And now we're like, we've made it more organic, more casual, more
Right.
relaxed, more conversational, more natural. And I think you're going to see, we know you're going to see some refinements in the podcast because we've been talking about it for 6 months. How can we do it? What are the things we need to do? We have a list of goals and we can see those goals. And we know what we need to do over the next several weeks to make those goals happen. It's just we need to remain consistent and deliberate about doing what we need to do, whether we like it or not. Some of it's going to be fun, some of it's going to be not so fun, but it's part of the process of
Right.
of reaching your goals and creating new goals and identifying new goals or new opportunities during this process or the process or journey that you're on. And Joe mentioned, he's on a journey, I'm on a journey, we're on a journey together. And I would and that our viewers and listeners on a journeys
Yeah.
and I would actually extend that one further, that our viewers and listeners are on a journey with us as we are with
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah.
It's what the podcast is about. And we're we're always learning new things. We meet weekly, we talk about how our week went. What did we learn? What did we gain? What did we experience? And that's a lot of the incentive for the podcast. It self propagates at this point, and your goals will begin to self propagate. As you get clear, as your vision gets clearer, and you identify your goals, and the smaller goals, and the micro goals, and the long range goals, which are more likely to change than your short range
Right.
goals.
Yep.
So it's kind of like looking down the street. It's up close. It's pretty clear, but 3 miles up the road, it may not be so clear. You might not see anything.
Absolutely. No, that's a very good point. That yeah, and I always like to see it as a kind of a reverse pyramid. It
Yeah, yeah,
starts at the point at the bottom, because you can see everything right there. But like you say, as you go down the road, things start to kind of widen out, and then
yeah.
things may not be as clear. So again, that gives you that room to bounce left, bounce right, even stop, maybe come back a few steps. But that's exactly it. That you can't see that far down the future. And if you could, maybe you would buy a lottery ticket and pick the correct numbers, but that's normally not the case. But I want to go back to what Dave said about the focus. If you start to identify those smaller goals, those smaller, micro goals that you can achieve, that's how you gain that momentum. And that's how you start to see clearer, because you have identified a path, a trail, and you don't have all that noise. And I'll use one of my favorite words again: you become more intentional about the things you do, especially for those immediate goals. Like Dave said, those the ones down the road are subject to change. But those ones that are, within a month, that are within a day, a week, those are probably a little bit easier to manage and to control versus something that's a year away, or even 6 months away. So, yeah, the more focus you can gain on what that next goal is, what that next milestone is, it's going to be a little bit easier to manage. And again, the recommendation is that you don't look too far down the road, because then maybe run into that imposter syndrome, or that reluctance to do anything because seems like you have such a long way to go, versus choosing those smaller things that not easy, things that you can achieve, but things that still, challenge you, but have some significance when you achieve those goals, so that you can celebrate like a 200th episode
Right.
or 4 years. So those are really big, but at the same time, it's taking that consistency, because we had to do 100, we had to do 20. So
We
it's
had to do one.
focusing. Absolutely. So that's where it started, with doing that first one. And nobody could ever, imagine that we'd be celebrating 200 or 4 years. So that's how that turns into that longer, achievable goal, is because we've broken down into those smaller steps, those smaller milestones, those smaller goals that we keep celebrating, and we hope to keep celebrating.
Yeah, and sometimes it's, well, this is episode 201. Now we're at 205. Now we're at 4 years. Now we're at 210.
Yep.
Sometimes it's just small little chunks like that. And you have to celebrate those things. Those small goals, you got to celebrate them, because that, again, to Joe's point, is what builds that momentum. It builds that positive energy and reinforces the fact that yes, you are doing it. You can do it. You will do
Right.
it.
Yep.
And I was just thinking, I fell off that train of thought. Jeez, I was going to go someplace with this. Probably wasn't another car analogy or driving analogy. I don't know, but I think well, I'll pause there because I'm starting to stutter.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to go back to the question we asked our audience out there. Is your next goal in sight? So what is it going to take for you to really think about what your next goal is? Once you achieve this, like Dave said, once you celebrate it, that's very important. And that's what I felt to do early on, and especially in my education journey. As I didn't do like Dave say, "Yeah, I'm done." I just kept saying, "Okay, what's the next one? What's the next one? What's the next one?" And it wasn't until I got to that final one, because I didn't even, I didn't want to walk across the stage. I didn't want to feel like I had achieved, which was a major milestone, but I just didn't want to celebrate that and lose any momentum. So I just kept plugging away. After I, finished a class on a Sunday afternoon, my next class started the next day for the next, level, from my bachelor's to my master's to my doctorate. And that's the way I viewed it. But I recognized at the very end, that I should have, celebrated each of those milestones, because they are big, and I'm glad I made it to the end. But what if I didn't? I would have never celebrated, those huge milestones. So definitely take the time to celebrate it. And again, that reinvigorates you. It gets you excited again about, okay, I finished that one. Let's move to the next one. And
Yeah.
even if it's just, you go out to dinner with the family or a close friend or whatever it is, celebrate it in some way. That recognition of completion, that acknowledgement of achievement, those things matter. And so make sure you do that.
And I'm going to go back in time a little bit. Several just in the last 5 years during COVID, there was I can't remember what they said, something like 20 or 30,000 people that graduated during COVID that were not able to walk across the stage or go
Mm,
out and celebrate
yep.
traditional celebration. I mean, maybe it was making a cup of coffee, that was your celebration, but it was a celebration. But they lost in that moment. They lost that big celebration, and even the
Right.
online celebration, the virtual celebrations were not the same. And I'm going to use my son as an example. He finished his bachelor's degree, didn't walk because of the virtual uh, the virtual walks and that sort of thing. And
Hmm.
he thought about it as, well, it's not that big of a deal. Everyone does it. It's just another thing. It's another box that's checked. But when he got his master's, we did go for him to walk for his master's degree. And after that, he came off the stage and came up to us and he's like, "This is awesome.
Right. Yeah.
Now I get it. Why it's important to celebrate these things. You cannot overlook your accomplishments, how big or
Right.
small. You have to celebrate." And Joe said, "Go friend or family, but maybe it's just doing something nice for yourself. Maybe it's
Right.
just putting on your favorite song with your favorite cup of coffee or whatever beverage or whatever meal, and you celebrate alone and just indulge yourself in those moments and reflect on everything that you've accomplished during that process, whether it's getting that job, whether it's completing school, whether it's getting a certification, whether it's, you know, finishing your marathon or whatever it is, half
Right.
marathon. Maybe it's celebrating that you just got up and took your first step, you know, things like that you have to celebrate. And Joe and I remind each other of that all the time, not because we need to, because it's encouragement. And the
Right.
more, and we realize the more that we encourage other people, the more we get encouraged. It's kind of a silly thing, but you start paying more attention to that and helping people celebrate. And, hey, that's a good job. We've talked about it early on that, how many people leave bad reviews? Tons. How many
Right.
people? And that's an actual statistic right there. Literally tons of reviews. That's okay, Joe. That was supposed to be funny, and you're not laughing. So we look at how many people receive good reviews about things online,
Right.
or recommendations, and it's significantly fewer. And so when someone does something or when you do something, share it and have someone to share it with, and hopefully they'll share and support you. And it gets back to the support system. But is your next goal in sight? Have you identified that goal?
Right.
What does it look like for you? We can't tell you what to do. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to put ideas, plant seeds, maybe open your mind to some different possibilities. That's one of Joe's favorite things to say. Keeping your mind open to the possibilities, because you never know when something seemingly random is going to come up, and all you have to do is say yes to it,
Yep.
and things
Yep.
change
Absolutely.
significantly. When Joe and I first started the podcast, we hadn't considered guest speakers.
Yep.
And now it's, as we mentioned last episode, it's one of our favorite things to do is to have guest speakers. So think about what your goal is. And we've mentioned it already. That goal may change, but what is that next goal? Is it going to change? How's it going to change? How are you going to ensure that it doesn't change if you don't want it to?
Well, I think we're getting close to time. And so I think, did you have any additional thing you wanted to share with the
Um,
audience?
I would say keep an open mind, but stay focused. And that
Okay.
sounds kind of like an oxymoron, but it really is that vision piece. You've got your vision looking down the road. It's narrower as things are closer to you and broader as things are further away. But the open mind is your peripheral vision.
Yeah.
So keep that level of awareness and that focus at the same time.
Well, I won't add much to that because I think you summed it up well. It almost is an oxymoron that you want to stay focused, but also keep your mind open. I think the focus piece is just have an idea of where you want to go. Again, it may change by the time you finally get there, but at least starting with something tangible, something that you can see, something that you can visualize will help along the way because you do need reminders of where you're trying to go. And keeping that open mind to the possibilities just allows you to, shift or change gears if you need to because it doesn't align anymore. So, again, if your goal is not in sight, then really think about what your closest goal is. And then once you have achieved that, celebrate it. What's your next goal? And just be prepared for the unexpected. Those things that, you weren't thinking of, things that just crossed your mind and you immediately crossed them out. Just keep your mind open to the possibilities. So again, thanks again for tuning in. Like they said, we enjoy doing this. We're committed to it. We want to continue to do it. We want to celebrate episode 500,000. Might look different, down the road. We may be two gray haired guys, or I don't have any hair, but Dave might be gray haired.
Maybe it'll be two bald guys.
Yeah, we may not even be looking at the screen because cataracts kicked in or something. But that's again, we jokingly say that, but that's what our hope is, that we can continue to do this as long as it's going to help you. It's helping each of us. So with that, again, thanks for tuning in. And as always, if there's topics you want to hear about or people you know might benefit from this content, let them know. That there's 200 plus episodes out there for them to go and peruse through, listen to bits and pieces of it. But again, just thank you for being here, and hopefully you are gaining something from this experience. So with that, we want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.